Sally Lyndley. Welcome to Lyndley Trends. On this episode, I want to talk to you about another influential German artist from post-war Germany, Joseph Beuys. So Joseph was an inspiration to Miuccia Prada, and he was a German performance artist who was born in 1920s and passed away in the mid-1980s. And he was interesting because he was one of the first hardcore performance artists to really start to bring shamanism into the art and cultural conversations. Shamanism was something that was also embraced by Picasso and a couple other artists from the time, but he was the first person to be really, really vocal about it. I think what's interesting about Joseph Beuys is his style of art. He was more, in some ways, I think, a teacher and a speaker just as much as he was a performance artist, if not more. And his whole concept behind his art was what he called social sculpture, or social sculpture. He wanted to change the landscape of the political, economic, and social environment through his conversations and through his art performances. So he spent a lot of time working and performing and just building these insane environments and doing these just very kind of outrageous performances to change people, to draw attention and to, point people's attention to things that he thought were very, very important. Mostly his conversations ran between and inside of the ethics of shamanism, of, making the human mind a creative and highly active thinking space, which obviously to me meant that he didn't think it was. So I just think he was a very interesting and thought-provoking artist. I'm going to put links below of all of his books and work, and there's some fabulous documentaries about him on YouTube that I'll pull links for as well. But I think what's interesting about him is he was a part of a movement in Germany called Fluxus. And Fluxus was inspired by the Dada movement, and they were formed in the post-World War II, and they were really kind of taking what Dada artists and their conversations that they started and taking it to the next level, and like I said, trying to put it more and more and more in culture. And what's interesting about all these artists is the German artists is that they were all reacting to obviously a severe world change and event inside of World War I and World War II. And all of these artists are so incredible to me because their stories and their conversations mostly revolved around positivity and, equal sexuality, equal, no racism, and all those kind of good things. So he's an incredibly inspiring artist. I definitely recommend you going and checking out his work. Google it. And, why I think this is so important is Miuccia Prada mentioned him as a big inspiration to her show, as well as the Fassbinder, movies. And he was actually a very similar time as Fassbinder. He was older than Fassbinder, but lived longer. And a lot of his most well-renowned work happened towards the late 70s, which was the same time that a lot of the big Fassbinder films, or most famous Fassbinder films, were also happening. So there's something happening with that kind of 60s, 70s culture, especially, kind of the 60s, 70s, late 70s and into the 80s fashion. And, if you want to work on relating this, obviously, why else would you care, to your fashion business or your beauty business, there's a couple different things you can look at. So his whole philosophy was also based around nature and science. So inside of his performance art, he used a lot of things like felts and found objects, but also natural science, found wood and things of that nature, honey, Lots of animal references from the shaman level. So those are all things you can think about inside of design. But I also go back, and when you look at his books, I mean, he's got an incredible inspiration. The way he dressed himself, although he wasn't necessarily an attractive man, I think that his uniform and how he dressed was incredibly cool. So he's definitely something to look at, whether it's menswear or women's wear. I definitely think that you can get a lot of ideas for set design or visuals, whether it be for a store window or for a photo shoot or any of that kind of thing. His work is incredibly inspiring because he created so many environments. He's also inspiring from a graphic. He considered himself a graphic artist. So the way that he presented his work and the graphics around all that are very, very inspiring from that time. And, you know, and I think also just reading some of his work, he did a lot of writing because he did so much teaching and speaking, and that was a part of his medium as a social sculptor. There's a lot of work that you can find of his philosophies and what he thought about society and art and creativity and moving things forward. And I think that that's interesting because it is very relevant to the other conversations of Lee Miller and Hannah Hoke and the Bauhaus, even though it was all different decades. They're all saying the same thing, and I think that the fact that these very prolific artists are such a big inspiration on the runways right now, you know, it's easy to just look at a runway show and say, oh, that's 1930s or that's 1970s, and just, you know, take inspiration from a trouser or a jacket. But I think, you know, especially when you're dealing with Miuccia Prada and Phoebe Philo, who are two of the leaders in our business, that there's a lot deeper thought than just a jacket and a trouser. And I think that women and men are having a conversation. Everybody is having a new conversation about the social and political and economic landscape. And I think that Joseph Beuys is a great person to look at for inspiration in those conversations for yourself and for your business. And looking at what ethics were interesting to him and what he thought was important. You know, so I think go and read his stuff. Obviously, it's super far out and don't want to get too hippy-dippy. I really want to be able to fully help you guys here. But also looking at his artwork, his materials, his setup design. I mean, it's very, very cool. And it's, again, that late 70s. You know, there's some 60s work in there, but that late 70s vibe, which definitely ran all over the runways, is in there. And I think looking at it from a very constructed art standpoint, and then listening to his conversations, reading his work, and thinking about, as an artist, how you shape the political and social environment. And I think that that is the bigger conversation that is interesting to me here. So anyway, that's this episode of Lyndley Trends. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Check out Joseph Beuys. He's incredible. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Lyndley Trends. Check you later.